All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation of Bitcoin all the time. There's furniture here. All right, I'm your host, Christine Lee, taking a look at our top stories. Crypto custodian NYDIG sees a future where people will be able to buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin at hundreds of U.S. banks. NYDIG saying more banks are demanding Bitcoin because they can see their customers withdrawing funds and sending money to Coinbase and other crypto exchanges. And looking at some M&A news, Galaxy Digital is buying BitGo for $1.2 billion. The acquisition is expected to close in the fourth quarter and is the next step of Michael Novogratz's financial services firm becoming a registered broker-dealer. It signals the expanded role custodians like BitGo play amid ever-increasing crypto asset valuations as Galaxy plans a U.S. listing later this year. And finally, a new bill in the New York State Legislature seeks to place a 3-year moratorium on crypto mining pending an environmental review by the state. Those deemed to be hurting New York's carbon cutting plans would be shut down. Now, taking a look at Bitcoin, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is right now trading at $57,449. Bitcoin is trending up about just over 5% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. All right, and taking a look at our chart of the day. Hit it.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
So crypto markets are rising along with U.S. stocks after U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen toned down comments suggesting interest rate hikes may be needed to stop the economy from overheating. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal Tuesday, Yellen saying raising rates is not something she's, quote, predicting or recommending, end quote, downplaying remarks made earlier in the day. In this chart, you can see that last green candle showing the price of Bitcoin recovering following these more pacifying remarks after a fall in price shown in that second to last red candle over there when Yellen suggested yesterday that interest rates, quote, will have to rise somewhat to make sure that our economy doesn't overheat. Not exactly controversial. So joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore in Boston. Welcome, Galen.
Thanks, Christine. Good to be here as always.
Good to see you. Happy Cinco de Mayo. All right, so Yellen is no longer the chair of the Federal Reserve, but the markets still don't like it when she talks about eventually squeezing the taps on easy monetary policy. Is it hard for the markets to hear the truth?
Well, I mean, I don't know. The comments were interesting coming just a week after Jerome Powell's press conference, less than a week. So I wasn't quite sure what to make of that myself. I'm not sure the market was either. And, you know, certainly you can see, or you can draw a line to what happened in Bitcoin over the past 24 hours. And those comments, although, you know, as I've said before, I think trying to tie Bitcoin moves to news events in any kind of systematic way is a difficult exercise.
Right. And we do see U.S. stocks and the broader markets in general also advancing after, you know, falling yesterday. So jittery markets, I don't know, or just natural course of the markets, who knows?
Well, the truth is, right, Bitcoin remains a risk-on asset. It's not the haven that gold is reputed as, right? So, you know, I think you can expect to see at least over longer cycles, the sort of warmer and hotter and more risk-oriented the market is, the more Bitcoin will benefit.
I think it's interesting just that, you know, Yellen, she's no longer the Fed chair. She's the U.S. Treasury Secretary, but she still has that kind of effect on people. It's kind of like a deja vu.
I mean, her status as former Fed chair and then, you know, her current role as well. I think people, you know, are watching her comments closely.
Nevertheless, Bitcoin is advancing as well as the overall crypto markets. But over the past couple of weeks, we do see Bitcoin dominance dwindling below 50% as investors look to explore other digital assets. When compared to other market cycles, is there a pattern, Galen?
So, well, first of all, let me just back up and kind of give a little background on the chart. I mean, what makes this possible is this definition we've developed for bull and bear regime change in cryptocurrencies. So this is in line with the kind of work we're doing at CoinDesk Indexes, developing custom methodologies for index licensees. And the methodology here is actually, real simple. The Bitcoin price changes 20% or greater if that's followed by at least 90 days during which the price doesn't return to its level before the change. We call that a regime change, whether from bull to bear or vice versa. So it gives us a way to, with a little patience, definitively look back in history and say what the market regime of Bitcoin is and was, and by extension, the entire cryptocurrency category. Now, what's interesting, I think, is how you're starting to see a perception emerge that Bitcoin's market benchmark status is maybe eroding a little bit. Can we use Bitcoin as the benchmark or the bellwether for all cryptocurrencies? I think we still can, but we may be seeing the beginning of a shift. So using these bull and bear cycles as a guideline, we wanted to look back first at Bitcoin dominance, as we're seeing on the chart here. And Bitcoin dominance is the ratio of Bitcoin's market cap to the sum market cap of all cryptocurrencies. The long-term decline is something that's been well noted here and elsewhere. And I think if you see the pattern across bull and bear cycles, it's this kind of one step forward, two steps back kind of a dance. In bear markets, you see this flight out of altcoins into the relative safety of Bitcoin. And in bull markets, the embrace of added risk swells the altcoin share of the market. And I think that's clearly what is happening in the market right now, as well as you see the climb of Ether against Bitcoin, while Bitcoin remains stuck in this band between 50,000 and 60,000. Ether, meanwhile, setting new highs.
Mm-hmm. Suggesting a potential flippening in the future.
The flippening narrative has reemerged. Yes.
Yes, that's a nice.
Although it's a much longer way to a flippening than it was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
From 3,400.
You also have another chart. This one, Bitcoin versus ETH, returns from the start to to the end of each bull or bear cycle. What's going on here?
Our analyst Shuai Hao and I made this chart just because we like these little bulls and bears so much, really, and we wanted to have them in as many charts as possible from now on. Looking here at that question of what's happening between Bitcoin and ETH in each of these market regimes, and I think what's clear to me from this chart is that as much as certainly the backers of Ether and Ethereum are very encouraged and excited about what's happening, as am I. What's happening here is very much in line with the pattern we've seen in bull markets of the past, especially bull markets of this length. The exception being the sort of quasi bull market of December 2018 to June 2019. Sort of an interregnum there of positivity between two bear markets. And at that time, you saw, Bitcoin and ETH really performing in the same way. But this pattern of Ether outperforming Bitcoin in the bull markets and then falling further than Bitcoin in the bear markets, is
so in comparison, Bitcoin looks a lot more stable.
It's a funny thing to say, right? If you're looking at it from any perspective other than within crypto assets, but certainly Bitcoin, at least over the history of this chart here, has remained the kind of the standard, right? Yeah. And for investors, and so I think unless we really do move toward an actual flippening, it will continue to be that way. But I do think that the status of Bitcoin as this kind of market benchmark is threatened by its declining dominance. And you'll start to need to look to more diversified indicators to try to determine what is the real,
really,
what's the status of the market.
Really interesting data. Galen, thanks so much for coming in this afternoon and sharing your charts with us.
Thanks a lot, Christine. As always, we'll post this chart to CoinDesk.com under the tag Index Insights later this week, by the way.
Absolutely. All right. That was CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore. Coming up, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange discusses trading micro Bitcoin futures.
We are witnessing the greatest paradigm shift in finance in modern history. Join thousands of newsmakers and influencers talking the future of money at Consensus by CoinDesk. A live virtual experience of leaders, changemakers, virtual reality meetups, keynotes from Ray Dalio, Gary Vaynerchuk, and much more. Get an up-close look at the boom in crypto, the surge of institutional investment in Bitcoin, NFT mania, the breakneck innovation in decentralized finance, and the coming disruption from central bank digital currencies. Join us May 24th to May 27th for Consensus by CoinDesk.
Micro Bitcoin futures contracts officially begin trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange today. Investors can now trade Bitcoin futures at 1/10 of one Bitcoin. Joining me now to discuss is CME Group Managing Director Tim McCourt. Welcome, Tim, to the show.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So explain to me how this product works, because I can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin, but when CME launched regular Bitcoin futures in 2017, does it require you to buy contracts worth one whole Bitcoin at a time, and that's why you're creating this new micro Bitcoin futures product?
Yeah, so when we launched Bitcoin futures back in December of 2017, that futures contract has a 5 Bitcoin multiplier, where our futures contracts are financially settled to the CME CF Bitcoin reference rate. So the contract notional is 5 times that reference rate, or the price of Bitcoin in terms of outstanding contract notional for the future. With the recent run-up in Bitcoin price to, let's say, that $57,000, $60,000, that contract has become worth $300,000 in terms of notional value, which has become a bit large for some folks and some participants in the market. And that's why we've introduced the micro Bitcoin future this week, which is 1/10 of one Bitcoin, 1/50th the size of its older sibling that we launched in 2017. So that contract is now right about now worth $5,700, much more manageable and precise for all the traders out there.
And what kind of volumes are you seeing so far with the micro Bitcoin futures?
Yeah, it's been a great first week so far. We launched Sunday night for Monday's trade session, and we've traded about 40,000 futures contracts so far on micro Bitcoin, which is phenomenal. On Monday, we did about 7,500 futures contract, making this launch the third best futures contract in CME Group's nearly 180-year history, behind our micro E-mini futures contract from 2 years ago and the E-mini S&P contract back in 1997. So micro Bitcoin is certainly amongst good company with respect to futures product launches at CME, and it's continued to grow from there, doing about 40,000 so far through this afternoon before I hopped on.
Yeah, how about volume activity with the regular, compared to regular Bitcoin futures contracts?
Yeah, it's been doing really well. It's both have been doing well. It's doing, when you adjust for size, yesterday it was about, I think, 30% of the volume of the regular Bitcoin contract. But we've also seen really strong adoption. So when we launch futures contracts, we look at a few things besides volume, and we've had good volume across the trading day. So good participation outside of U.S. hours and during the U.S. regular trading hours. And we've also had about 400 accounts trade the product so far through last night. We don't have yet today's numbers, we'll get that later. But having 400 accounts across the first 2 sessions trade the product is also an outstanding success, and very pleased with the progress so far.
And who are your clients? Who's asking for micro Bitcoin futures? Is there a lot of demand for it before you release this?
Yeah, certainly when we introduce products, one of our secrets of success is listening to clients and trying to launch products that meet a clearly articulated customer demand. And this is no exception. All customers across the spectrum, whether they're institutions or active individual traders, crypto native versus traditional trading firms, all can benefit from the smaller, more precise product in terms of having greater flexibility and more choice when looking to either access the cryptocurrency market through Bitcoin or even manage some of their other Bitcoin-related risk. You could have an accumulated digital position either through spot transactions on some of the exchanges, or you could be mining Bitcoin, and now you can more precisely hedge that in $6,000 increments as opposed to using $300,000 increments in the older version BTC, which is still available, but it is just a much larger contract to use.
Tim, I wonder, based on the contract's activity, are traders more bullish or bearish on Bitcoin?
Oh, that's a great question, but it's always hard for us to tell as the exchange because every time we transact, there's always a buyer and a seller, right? So hard to say directionally what way the market is leaning, especially this day. The ecosystem has grown so much that people are a lot of times using futures against other products in the market, whether they be some of the structured products out there or physical Bitcoin. So enthusiasm is strong, but tough to say from exactly what direction people are looking to trade.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, but earlier this week, we also saw that Ether options volumes surpassed Bitcoin as ETH hit an all-time high. Did CME see a similar trend with futures contracts?
So with respect to Ether, certainly had a very strong run on price with Ether over the last few months. And we had actually a record trading day this week in our Ether futures, trading 6,500 futures contract at CME, which is worth 325,000 Ether equivalent because that multiplier is 50 Ether. So it didn't necessarily surpass Bitcoin futures for that day earlier this week, but did put in a new daily record trading volume number, I think, in response to some of the price action we're seeing. And Ether continues to gain momentum, not only in price, but in terms of how people want to trade it and want to access that market as the second largest token out there.
Right. Now, Tim, the whole point of Bitcoin, though, is to be able to use financial services without the need of a financial middleman. So what do you think of that ethos, and where do you see the role of banks and financial service firms in the future?
I think it's still, even though Bitcoin's been around for more than a decade, I think it's still a little too early to tell because from our perspective, banks are getting involved in this space. They are trying to figure this out. They are trying to bridge some of that gap between the traditional finance and some things new and exciting as cryptocurrency. Banks have been very supportive of our contracts at CME. So I think when we look at it, I think what's really interesting at this point is that it's appealing to all types of institutions, whether traditional or more crypto native. So I'm not sure it's necessarily the same type of narrative these days where this is against traditional finance. I think we're actually seeing some traditional applications, which is helping grow the ecosystem for all types of participants, whether you're more crypto native or traditional hedge fund or asset manager. So I think it's really exciting to watch. And I think time will tell how that ecosystem continues to develop, but we're certainly see all participants involved and still benefiting from the underlying technology.
Tim, do you see the CME dabbling into decentralized finance one day or automating transactions and market makers? And quickly, because we have to wrap up in about a minute.
Yeah, good. So good question. I would say, we're certainly looking at it. I think one of the things that's exciting about things like the Ethereum network is it's a lot of useful application on very traditional services and systems. So we're certainly looking at lots of projects in the space, but not necessarily committing to DeFi or decentralized finance at this time, but still evaluating the technology and always will listen to customers for where we should focus next.
Perfect. Tim, thanks so much for joining us on the show this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that was CME Group Managing Director Tim McCourt. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.